Welcome back. It may seem surprising to some, but asbestos is still the #1 killer of workers in BC. We have Bruce Clark joining us. He's the regional manager for Worksafe BC in Prince George. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for making the trip down here.
No problem.
Yeah. This is shocking because I know this is something that I heard, a decade ago. I didn't think that this was still the case. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, the problem with asbestos is it was something that was being used in the building trades and that a number of years ago because of its fire resistance and that it's a mineral type product, and the fibers and that as soon as they get airborne, they, if they're inhaled, and that can cause serious health effects.
So where is it most commonly found?
It's usually in homes that are pre-1990, and in those days it was being used in cement, it was being used in vermiculite insulation in attics and that sort of thing, in the wallboard, the filler in wallboard and that sort of thing. So it had a lot of applications in the construction industry.
Okay, so when people are going and updating or changing or taking something out, that is still a material that is very commonly found.
That's correct, and that's why we still have this problem, is it takes years to manifest the health problems. And what we're seeing now in workers, they were probably exposed 20, 30 years ago. And where we still have the problems is the renovations and demolition of these older houses, pre-1990 houses, is that those things are in there. The asbestos itself is very safe as long as it's not touched, but once you start sanding, drilling, or working with it, and it becomes airborne, then that's where you start inhaling the fibers, and they'll stay in the air for quite a period of time.
Do employees need to take this seriously? Do you think that there's some employees out there that think, oh no, that won't affect me, I'm young and strong and it's not going to hurt my lungs?
You betcha. There's lots of the old guard like me and that sort of thing. You see some of these people out there that just think, well, it's out of sight, out of mind. You just can't see it, so it can't hurt me. But
right.
Believe me, in the early 1980s, our fatality rate from asbestos-related diseases was about 8%. In 2014, 55% or 98 individuals, workers, died from asbestos exposure.
Okay, and just talking about that mentality of people who think, oh no, that won't affect me, it won't hurt me. I know that Worksafe BC has put together a video that sort of exemplifies this sort of mindset, so we'll take a look at that.
I've been working construction renovation a couple years. Some of the jobs are kind of sketchy, but whatever, I need the money.
All you want to do is get your job done so you can go home. Nobody thought of what's going to happen later on down the road. Especially not this.
I've heard you have to be careful around it, but it's not like I'm afraid or anything. It's not that big a deal.
We worked with it all the time. Everybody did.
I don't plan to do this much longer, so I'm good.
This was work I did in my 20s. I've been out of construction for years.
If I think it's around, I just stay away from it, work in a different area.
I probably should.
So, Bruce, what does an employer need to do to prevent asbestos exposure for employees to make sure that they are safe?
Well, what they need to do is, especially if they're looking at doing work in buildings or sites that were pre-1990 construction and that, one of the first things they got to do is get a survey done to see if there's actually asbestos on the site. Once they get that done, then they find out what level of hazard's there, whether it's something that easily becomes airborne, or whether it's something that, is more difficult to become airborne because there's different precautions you would need to take depending on the type of asbestos containing materials you're dealing with.
And who is qualified to work with asbestos? Do you have to have special training?
Well, when we talk about qualified persons for it, it's people that have worked and know how to abate asbestos hazards through education, experience, and technical knowledge and training. Those are the kinds of people that we would expect that would be doing those sorts of assessments and that.
And I'm sure you would have to have some special equipment on hand as well. Employers have to make sure they are well equipped to deal with it.
For sure. It depends on what, again, you go back to the assessment. It depends what type of material you're dealing with. It could be as simple as wetting down the material you're working with, right up to having to enclose areas, putting people into protective covering and breathing apparatus, respirators or SCBAs and those sorts of things to protect the workers from the exposure. So it all goes back to the initial assessment to determine what type of of material you're dealing with and the hazards present.
Something to take very seriously still, regardless of the fact it's 2015, we think, oh, that's a past generation problem. It's very much not. It's still very much there. If it's not being handled properly, it's going to still cause problems.
I agree. We've got lots of situations. It's so serious that in the Lower Mainland, for example, where we have a lot of the older homes being demolished and that, we've got teams down there, and we're expanding it provincially, that are just dedicated to going out and looking at these types of sites to make sure that workers are being kept safe when they're working on the demolition or revitalization of older homes.
That's good. That's proactive.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. You know what? Thank you for being here today. Talk to us a little bit more about this.
Thank you very much.
Okay. If you would like to learn more about this topic, worksafebc.com is where you can go online. We are back in 2 minutes. Stay with us.